Welcome to Culture Over Coffee, a podcast focused on improving company culture and fostering employee engagement. Every week, we chat with experts and thought leaders about the latest proven practices to reduce regrettable turnover, increase productivity, and retain key customers. So pour a cup of your favorite brew and join us. I'm your host, Beth Sunshine, SVP at Up Your Culture. Middle managers are the critical link between leadership and employees, but many of them feel disengaged, unsupported, and even overwhelmed. In this episode, Matt Sunshine, CEO of the Center for Sales Strategy, is joining me to discuss why managers are struggling to stay engaged and how that impacts the teams they lead. Matt has some amazing takeaways, like why the way in which companies shift the goalposts in how they measure success makes middle managers feel as though they can never win. How when middle managers are disengaged, it spreads like wildfire, transforming employees who were previously all in into people who clock in and check out. And finally, why if managers aren't involved in navigating the future of your organization, you'll soon be in a boat that's rowing in circles. Matt, welcome to the show. Super excited that you're here today as the CEO of the Center for Sales Strategy and Up Your Culture, and someone who's been leading with strategy and heart for years. Your big picture perspective is one that I've been looking forward to hearing. I know our listeners are going to really appreciate, especially when it comes to what's happening with mid-level managers, which is what we're going to talk about today. So thank you.
I'm excited to be here. You were nice enough to share with me some of the questions and for me to prep, and I am truly excited to dig in to some of these topics.
I am too. Yeah, there was a lot to think about. Didn't want to spring it at you. We'll jump in with some data. You know, the Engaged 2025 report just published, and it shows that 42% of mid-level managers feel engaged. And that just sort of hurts my heart right there. But it also tells us that over half believe that culture is getting worse. So from your perspective, I'm curious, what's driving, do you think, this sharp decline in manager morale?
Yeah. So sadly, it wasn't a surprise for me to see that. It hurts. Don't get me wrong. It definitely hurts. You hate to see that. But just talking to a lot of people out there that work for companies, there is a lot of frustration. And so what causes it? I mean, I wish I knew. I wish I knew the thing that caused it. If I did, I promise I would share it with everybody. So while I don't know the thing, I know some of the things. And I think a big one is a lack of shared vision of where we're going. There is just all these things are happening, all these changes, all these adjustments, and maybe all of them are for the exact right reason. But when it's not communicated to everyone why we're doing this or where we're going with this or what we hope to have happen or just kind of that vision and direction, it makes all of those changes not exciting. And, oh, wow, look, we're changing. We're pivoting. We're maneuvering. We're aligning ourselves to be successful in the future. It makes it look like, where are we going and what's going to happen next? I mean, it'd kind of be like being in the back seat of a car and wearing a blindfold, right? You can't really see, and now you really can't see. And so those turns, those accelerations, those putting on the brakes, all of them seem slightly more exaggerated than they need to. And because of that, it causes frustration. I think the other thing that's going on, so that's one. The second thing is the rules of the game keep changing, and not the rules of how do we win the game of business. The rules of the company that you work for are changing. The way they are measuring success, the way they are compensating, the way they are rewarding, the way they are measuring any of the measures along the way. It seems like they keep changing them in a way from the management, the middle management section, in a way that it makes it seem like they can never win. It's like I hear, well, you told me what the rules were, and so we adjusted and made the corrections that we need to make to be successful, and now you just changed the way you're measuring everything, and I'm no longer successful. This place is frustrating. That's what I hear. So those are two of the reasons.
Yeah. You're making me think of, do you remember Lucy and Charlie Brown and how she would move the ball every time he went to kick it? That's sort of the vibe I'm getting, that, I'm aiming, I'm working towards it, and then that's moving. And a really important point about people, not feeling as though they know where they're going or why. And I love the way you described how the unexpected things then feel more exaggerated. That's really good food for thought. Thank you. Managers, I was recently talking to someone just earlier today who described middle managers as the glue between leadership and employees. So I wanted to kind of dig into that a little too. What happens when that glue weakens? How does it affect the whole organization?
Yeah, so the pendulum always swings when it comes to middle management. Either we're in a time where people think, boy, we need more middle management because it helps keep everything together, or we're in a time where people are like, we don't need middle management. We need to flatten the organizations. The top needs to be closer to the bottom, and we can use automation. And so no matter, if you go back and you look at business over the last 5 decades or so, you definitely see that pendulum swing back and forth. Let's go with the premise that middle management is extremely important. And if the jobs are defined correctly and they have purpose to them, well, then they are really important. I think everyone would agree to that. So what happens when those folks are disengaged? A couple of things. One, maybe not necessarily the best, but at least you can deal with it a little easier, is turnover. Turnover happens. All of a sudden, people start leaving. They don't want to stay. They don't know what's going on. Their direct manager isn't engaged. And so is feeling squeezed. They just leave. Okay. So that's easier because at least you know what to do with turnover. I need to replace, or I need to choose not to replace. The second thing that happens all the time, it's the worst thing that could happen, is disengagement, because they stay, right? Now you have people that used to be all in. What does all in mean? It means that they didn't think about their job as 9 to 5. They thought about their job as, I have work to do. I get to go to work. I love where I work. Some days I might need to get in a little early because I got work to do. Some days I might get in a little late because I got things I got to do. Some days I'm going to have to work at night. Sometimes I'm going to have to work on the weekends. Other times I can go have a longer lunch because I enjoy my work I'm getting here. As this disengagement creeps in, people start saying, you know what? I'm not getting there a minute earlier than 9. 5 o'clock, I'm done. Book shuts. Doesn't matter that there's more work to do. They're out of there. I'm gone. Those same people that when recruiters would call and say, hey, I'm calling you to talk to you about an opportunity across the street at another company, they would say, not interested. I love where I work. It doesn't even matter. I don't want to talk to anyone. All of a sudden they're going, you know what? I'll listen. I don't know if I'm going to go anywhere, but I'll listen. All of a sudden, people, every dollar of what they earn means everything to them. If I can, I don't even like working here. So if they're not going to pay me a little bit more, I'm out of here. That starts to creep in. And that really, in business today, you can't afford to miss a beat. That causes you to miss a beat.
That makes a lot of sense. And what you're describing is something that we often hear called discretionary effort. So when people are
Sure.
engaged,
Good word.
they're willing to give more discretionary effort. And when they're not, suddenly they're paying attention to the clock, to their paycheck, because that's all they feel they're getting in return. I want to think a little bit more about, I'm still picturing your middle manager in the back seat with the blindfold on. And I like that a lot.
They feel as though they're like held hostage. It's like hostage.
That's how it's sounding to me. Doors are locked. You can't get out, and
out.
we're not going to tell you where we're going. We know those managers, you said it right. There's a pendulum swinging, but let's go with the premise that those managers are really important. And in my experience, they're the front line. They are the ones who are truly creating engagement among the employees. They're pivotal. So, with that premise that they're important, it does seem as though they're being excluded from some of the strategic planning, some of the communication. We're working with more than one large company right now where we're hearing from middle managers, I don't even know what the vision is. I don't know where we're going to be 3 years from now, even maybe next year. So why do you think that there's this missing middle, this middle manager that isn't part of the conversation? Instead, they're in the backseat of that car. Why are they being overlooked?
Yeah. So I've been accused over the years of being overly optimistic. So I'm going to go into this with my what? No. Everyone that's watching this that knows me is like, kinda. I think that many times they are overlooked, not invited to the conversation for a couple of different reasons. I think many times it's unintentional. Mm-hmm. Things are moving fast. They know how busy that manager is. They don't want to pull them into a meeting that isn't necessarily going to get anything done. They don't want, those meetings are not structured enough or formalized enough that they are worried. Leadership is worried that middle management's going to attend that meeting and walk out of there and go, this was a total waste of time. I could have been doing this. You've put more pressure on me to do these other things. And now you're pulling me into this meeting that's never going to go anywhere. So I think it's a little unintentional, sometimes can be a little bit unintentional. Associated with that is, I don't think people always know the best way to include other people. Right? I don't know if it again goes back to, it's not structured enough. It's not formalized enough. It's not, there's not a system or a process in place to include those people. Sometimes you hear people say, I want their opinion, but there's so much back information that I'd have to give them to make their opinion relevant to the conversation, and they don't know how to give that to them. There's that. There's the expression, "Don't operate on yourself." Right? You'd never operate on yourself. Why would you do that? Right? Oh, I need to have surgery done. Who's the surgeon? Me. I'm doing it. Well, if you think about the vision or the mission, the vision, the core values of your company, the strategic plan, the 3-year plan, the 1-year plan, the BHAG that you're trying to, any of those things that you're trying to set, why would you want to take that on all by yourself? Why would you not want to hire an expert to come and facilitate that for you, or have a coach that would guide you through it, or have a peer group that you could bounce ideas off of? I mean, there's all sorts of ways to do this, but going it alone, unless you are a seasoned pro that has done this lots of ways, but probably the first few times you did it, you didn't do it alone. So I think the best organizations have figured out a structured way to bring people involved, get their input at the right time, set those people up for success, not waste their time. But for the vast majority, I don't think they have that. And so therefore, their experience of pulling in middle management isn't very good. And so they just say, it's not worth it. I don't want it. So it's kind of unintentional, and I don't really know how to do it correctly.
Yeah, I share your optimism there. I don't think it serves any organization to keep their managers in the dark. I think you're exactly right that it's happening unintentionally. Another thing that's happening unintentionally that came through crystal clear in the survey data is that middle managers are often struggling to engage their people because they feel disengaged themselves. So how does a manager who feels burnout, who feels disconnected, they're not rolling up their sleeves to give that discretionary effort themselves, how do they prevent that from rolling down to the teams that they're supposed to lead? And what is the hidden cost of that burned out or disengaged manager to the organization?
Yeah, I mean, that hidden cost is tremendous. I mean, in terms of revenue, it could be really significant, or in terms of production or quality customer service, it could be the difference between a business making it or not making it. Not to be over dramatic, but I think it'd be wrong not to take it that far. So what can they do? I talked to someone just the other day who is completely frazzled, burned out, doesn't know the direction of the company that they work for, has worked at this company for 15 plus years, she doesn't have a tattoo of the company on her, but she could have. She loved where she worked. And today is extremely frustrated, doesn't know the direction, doesn't know if she's bought in on the direction, has just seen too many things change and doesn't understand the why, right? As Simon Sinek has become famous for saying, you gotta, not only do you need to tell them what, but you gotta tell them why. And when in talking to her or lots of people like her, the best advice that I have for people like that is control your culture, control your sphere of people. And yeah, you can't shield them from everything going on at your company. That's impossible. But you can make them part of this team that you control. And control your controllables, right? If you be extra transparent, you be extra inclusive, you be extra, you don't like it that you're not included in building the strategy. Well, make sure when you build your strategy for your team for the next 6 months or a year or 3-year plan, make sure you include those people and include them. Control what you can control. Will it totally make up for everything else going on? Of course not. Will it get you going in the right direction and maybe provide you a little sanity in the insanity? Perhaps.
I did a workshop recently that was about creating an employer brand and how it's not enough just to market really well. You can put your best image forward, but if that's not who you really are, people are not going to join your organization and stay. So you really need to create a true employer brand and then market it out there. And one person said, if you look up our company on Glassdoor, on Indeed, on LinkedIn, our ratings are terrible. But I work really hard to make sure my team is engaged. So when I interview people, I own the fact that our company isn't always a great place to work necessarily, but that my team is. And I thought it was really powerful of someone in a middle manager role to, while the rest of her company is getting their act together, really own her team and the vibe and the environment and the level of happiness on her team. I thought that was really, really cool. And it showed just a lot of power. The report highlighted that a lot of managers actually feel very powerless. They're caught between rising expectations and limited authority. Their company wants more out of them, but they're not empowered to do so many things. So I'm curious, just from your position, which you have a nice vantage point, what would you say organizations can do to reduce that pressure, to give managers maybe a bit more freedom to have that sense of power, maybe arm them with tools and trust, the things that they really need?
Yeah, I want to go back to something you just said before I answer that question.
Yeah.
So, over the years, I've talked to plenty of people that work for organizations that have offices throughout the country or even internationally. And there are certain companies that have just an outstanding reputation. Like, you hear about them, you go, oh man, anyone that could work there, that's a great place to work. And so when you dig a little deeper, you sometimes hear this. It's an awesome place to work, but just between you and me, you'd never want to work here because the person that runs that division, they're a tyrant, right? Conversely, you hear it exactly opposite too. You hear of companies that don't have the greatest reputation from this big, but people will say, yeah, they don't have the greatest reputation. But I'll tell you what, if you ever get an opportunity to work with this person, you should take it because that person's a rock star. They are the best of the best. You'd be lucky to work in that organization for that person. So you see it both ways. So I think it's both an employer brand, but it's also a leader brand. Yeah. Right? The individual leader brand can also be a big deal. And in 2025 and beyond, there are lots of resources to build your personal brand, right? There's LinkedIn, X, TikTok, whatever you want to use. Social media has made it very, very easy to build your personal brand. Okay, so back to your question that you asked, though, on we'll restate the exact question because I wanted to respond to something.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious how organizations can just reduce the tension, the pressure that they put on managers, and maybe how they can give them tools, arm them, empower them, trust them. How can they improve this situation? Yeah.
So I think just calling it, so you use the word tension, and I want to highlight that word tension. I think, and just say, I think any place in the organization that you can reduce personal tension is going to be good. Another word to use is friction, would be the same sort of thing. Any place that you can reduce the amount of personal friction. So it's not a personal attack. It's not personal friction. It's make it a professional tension or a professional friction. Just that demeanor. Again, I think I shouldn't say never. I don't think I've ever had a conversation with leadership in any organization where they were intentionally trying to disengage their employees. Think about that.
I would agree.
For one side, like even the companies that have the worst engagement scores you could imagine, when you talk to leadership, all they want is for there to be engagement, right? So there's not a lack of wanting to do it, or there's not a sincerity. What they need is the tools, right? And some of those tools are being extraordinarily transparent, having core values that mean something. It's something interesting in our company. You know this, of course, but in our company, we have core values: quality, integrity, and responsiveness, in that order, as we always say. And we did an exercise years ago where we gathered the entire company together and we said, let's not try to define what each word means. Instead, let's come up with lots of examples of how you might spot quality, lots of examples of how you might spot someone having integrity, lots of examples of how you'll see responsiveness show up every day in our real work life. I've shared that with so many people where that is such a breakthrough concept, because what they wanted was a definition, was a 6 words that say quality equals this. And unless it's that, it's not. And when I've shared with them, we didn't do that at all. We came up with lots of examples of how quality shows up. It's such a freeing thing. But imagine if you just focused on that, just your core values, let everyone participate in coming up with how those core values show up in work, and then put something in place to recognize and celebrate when people are showing the core values. That right there would be a huge step in the right direction. That would be monumental.
I agree. And I love, just to kind of highlight 2 things that you shared. I love the way you're getting away from defining core values and instead really describing the way I would say it is, here's what we always do, or here's what we never do. That is going to give you scenarios to work around. I love that. And I forget what the second thing was that you said that I was going to point to. Oh, the recognition aspect. Really noticing when you see those behaviors being demonstrated and, shining a spotlight on it. No better way to get behaviors to happen more often than to recognize them. Love it. That might be one of the most just practical tips I've heard in a long time. I'm going to dig in for some more, though. What are 1 or 2 simple but impactful actions that senior leaders can take, maybe even this week, to show real support for their managers or their employees?
Ask their opinion. Ask them how they feel about something. Ask them what they think about something. I mean, especially if you truly haven't made up your mind yet. Like if you're waffling on as a leader, sometimes you have decisions you have to make that there's 2 or 3 options on how it could be done. Why don't you get on the phone or get on a Teams meeting or Zoom with someone and say, hey, I just need you for 15 minutes. We're thinking about going in this direction. Can I just get your thoughts on this? I mean, why and how? And I think that sort of collaboration, sometimes people think that asking someone for help is a burden. And I think that if you're dumping your work on someone else, it is a burden. You're just, what you're doing? You're dumping your work on someone else. And that's not good to do. However, showing someone that you value their thinking, you value their approach, you value their intelligence, you value what they bring to the company, and asking them for help on a project that you're working on can really be very empowering. Like, is there something that you have on your desk right now that you could ask someone that you work with for their input or help on? I promise you, they will not see it as, oh, I can't believe they asked me to do their work for them. Instead, they'll say, you know what? I work at a place that they really value my opinion. They think that I bring something. And by the way, if you don't think that of your person, then maybe they're not the right person, because you should have people like that. And if you don't have people like that, then get people like that, because as the leader, you need the people in your organization to be able to do their job better than you can do it. If you're the leader and you can do if you can do everyone's job better than them, your organization's going to get smaller. Right. If you're a leader and in your organization, everybody who's in their job can do it better than you could ever imagine doing it, your organization gets bigger. And if you want, I have a growth mindset. So I'm always thinking about how can we grow an organization? So hire the very best people and do everything you can to give them the tools and resources they need to grow bigger and better at their position, so that there's no way you could replace them. I think that mindset. The other thing, if you want a tactic, and some people have heard me talk about this, I'm a big believer in transparency and communication. And in our company, I send out a video every Monday morning. I think I've done that for the last 7 or 8 years. Every single Monday morning, I send out a 1 to 4 minute video, kind of giving everyone an update on what's going on in the company, or something trivial, or something about the core values, or something about our vision, or something about a shout out to something that we've done good or that we should be proud of. And that sort of open communication, open dialogue. My goal is that it sets the tone for everyone, that we work at a place that this sort of open communication is not only allowed, but kind of, I want that encouraged. Mm-hmm. And I want people to feel like they can have a voice, because they do, and they can. And that's the way we're going to get better and bigger.
Yeah. I've heard shout outs for your Monday morning videos for years now. I know, just even personally, I always look forward to them and get a lot out of them. One thing I think that just indicates how powerful those are is the chatter that they start. So sometimes you'll pose a question on that. You'll be thinking something through. You will have read something and you'll share it. And next thing you know, there's a whole discussion happening where people are, on our communication channels talking about it. And I just love that, because it shows they're listening, and you're giving all of us, everyone, the voice to then talk about it, think about it. I think that's a great tactic. I'm glad you shared it.
I'll just say this.
Oh, go ahead.
I'll just say this. The best compliment that I ever got on those videos is one time I had taken an early flight on a Monday morning, and my plan was, when I landed where I was going to record the video from wherever I landed, but my flight got delayed and I couldn't record the video for it was a couple hours late getting there. And like 5 or 6 people emailed me or texted me and go, "Hey Matt, where's the video?" And I was like, so nice. Like, oh, people really do pay attention to that. Yeah. It was a very, it meant a lot to me that people noticed it wasn't there.
Yeah, I bet it did. And I think it means a lot to people to know that no matter where you are, and you've been in all sorts of places, you've got a message that you want to share, and you love the feedback.
But those are just 3. I mean, I've just shared with you 3 tactics of things that I've either seen or that I've done. I am constantly looking for new ways and new approaches to include more people, be more transparent, build more culture, share the core values, be more transparent. I could certainly share a dozen more things that all of our leadership that we do in our company. But anyone that's listening to this or watching this, if there's anything that you're doing that works particularly well, I'd love it if you comment or share, or come to my LinkedIn and add something. It's an important conversation, and one that we're never done, right? We're never done. We've never check, did that. There's always going to be something new that we can go, you know what? That's a great idea. We need to do that as well.
Yeah, I agree. I'll be looking for those comments. I also think that's another great example of just how you value the input you receive from others. Okay, I'm going to ask you one last question. So for other CEOs or others in the C-suite who are listening, if they want to improve engagement company-wide, this is a passion. It's important to them. They know it's now or never. Why should they start with their managers? Why is that the first step?
Yeah. Why should they start with their managers? And is that the first step? I think it's probably the second step. I think the first step is you start with yourself.
Okay.
I think that the first step is you say, I am going to make this important. I am going to be responsible for making sure that this happens. I am not going to just give it to somebody else and say, hey, I'm not even involved in this. You guys go and do it. I think it starts with me, or starts with the leader saying, this is important to me. The next step is get your managers involved. Let them have a voice, let them have a seat at the table, get them involved. Because if they're not, then they are not involved. And, you talk about the boat all getting everyone rowing in the same direction. The manager, so you have to be rowing in the same direction as your managers as your people. Everyone's got to be on. If you're rowing in one direction, your managers are rowing in another direction, the other people in the company are either rowing backwards or the wrong way or not at all, or maybe one or two is in the right direction. It's going to cause more harm than good. You probably would have been better off doing absolutely nothing. So make it a priority for yourself. By the way, success leaves clues. The best organizations out there have the strongest culture, have the most engagement. So if you want to have a successful business, you ought to have one that has a strong culture and a high level of engagement. Take that, get that buy-in yourself, get your leadership team involved, and then pass. Then with that in mind, you can go to everybody else.
Love it. Success leaves clues. Well said. Thank you so much for joining me, for drilling down into the fact that managers really do matter in this process. You gave us some great tactics, really good ways to think of things. As always, your insight is both practical and inspiring. So I appreciate you sharing it. Also, you invited people to comment and maybe share back with you some strategies, tactics they've used. So we're going to add your LinkedIn information in the show notes. Encourage people to connect with you and share. And we'll also put a link to the Engaged 2025 report there so that listeners can take that next step, dig in, understand, and maybe consider how they can start with themselves. So thank you, Matt, for joining me. Thanks so much for spending time with us on Culture Over Coffee. If you enjoyed the conversation, be sure to subscribe and join us for every episode. For more helpful information about company culture and employee engagement, visit us at upyourculture.com.